Like, how will we know if there are
I think
questions?
Sakshi has a set
I'll
of
ask you.
questions. First she'll ask, and then whatever we get in the chat, we'll tell you that also.
Got it. Sounds good.
Just give me 1 minute.
Yeah.
Sorry, कुछ तो glitch हो रहा है. मेरे को 1 minute दो.
No problem.
Okay, yes, we are live.
All right, cool.
Perfect. So I'll just start. For the uninitiated, Garima is an IMA alum who graduated in 2017. Started a career in marketing, worked in AB and Bev for some time, around 2 years, I guess, and then started and opened her own firm, Sploot. So we have a lot of questions based on how you transitioned and what were your learnings from the whole experience. So let's just start with it. My first question to you is, going through the IMA process, did you have that idea that you wanted to be an entrepreneur, like sooner or later? Because a lot of people keep this in mind that sooner or later, this is where I want to end up. So did you have that idea, or was it the career path automatically took you there?
I had absolutely no clue. Can you guys see me? It seems to be a
Yeah, there's some glitch from your end.
little bit of a lag, no? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
You guys can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I had zero clue to answer, short answer to your question. I actually did I decided to do an MBA because I was already working in marketing. And I was working on the agency side. So my reason to do an MBA was that I want to work on the brand side, and doing an MBA will be a quicker path to get there. So that was why I was doing it. I was on campus. I was very, very clear that I wanted to do marketing. In fact, I remember not even applying to consulting, finance, anything else. I only applied for marketing roles. So from that one single objective that I came to campus for, I kind of fulfilled that. And it's only after I kind of started working outside, after I started thinking about, okay, what next is when entrepreneurship kind of just happened. It wasn't by design at all. In fact, I remember having a lot of batchmates who were very, very keen to do entrepreneurship while on campus, and a couple of them took the Mavericks program. I'm guessing you guys still have that as well.
Right.
I remember thinking that would be amazing to have an idea that I was so passionate about that I would be working on it, but I didn't have it then. So that was not why I came to campus. So yeah.
So throughout your career path, including marketing as well as your entrepreneurship journey, what are the lessons that you've taken from MBA throughout that journey? What is that one thing or like a few things that stuck with you?
So a lot of things, and I feel like I mean, some of it is subject learning, right? A lot of what we do on campus is we're learning about subjects in a deeper way. We're looking at cases which are maybe technical in nature, right? So you tend to think that going forward, my problem will be to solve this marketing problem of how do I grow brand awareness, or this operations problem of how do I solve this capacity issue and make sure that I'm kind of on time for whatever demand comes in or whatever else, right? So that obviously continues, right? And depending on what situations you're in, you kind of start thinking back to, acha, ye case, I remember aisa kuch kiya tha, and I remember some discussion around this happening. So a lot of it is, things that you don't realize in that moment in time that will end up being useful. It's only when you start your career and then you start kind of, putting the years in and kind of getting into different situations that you realize that, okay, all of this that I did then now makes sense, right? So it's like you get the context first, but you don't get to apply it till you are actually in that situation that context.
Right.
So a lot of it is that. So I feel like I'm still kind of exploring everything that I've learned somewhere and stored somewhere and now applying it because it's relevant now. So that is more on the subject side. I think I remember all our OB professors that time also saying that you will come back after 5 years and tell me that I wish I had paid more attention during OB courses. It is a standard thing, right? I'm sure they've kind of said it in your classes as well. It is actually true. Speaking as somebody who has now seen that happen. It's just that in that moment you don't think that हाँ इसमें तो क्या है, इसमें तो कर लेंगे. But when you're in that situation, you realize how much of a dharm sankat it is, right? That it's very easy to sit in a classroom and read a case and be like, no, I would have done this in that situation. But when you realize that there's a lot hanging on each and every word you say almost sometimes as well, that's when it comes back to haunt you, that I wish I had, or not I wish I had paid more attention, but more that now I understand the value of having studied that, right? Which usually we take a little lightly. So I think from both those aspects, those are things that actually stick with me, right? That even now, for example, with marketing, right? Because that was my interest area. A lot of the work that we did in marketing, in the cases, in the way that we used to kind of study those subjects, were at a strategy level, right? Be thinking about how do you create a brand, how do you ensure that things are continuous, how do you plan budgets, how do you think of, you used to have that simulator thing in second year, probably have it. At that time, it seems very abstract, right? And you're very excited by, I want to do brand strategy and whatever. But you realize after you kind of join any place after your MBA, you don't start at strategy level, right? You start at executive level. Somebody else has created the strategy. You have to execute it for a number of years first. And in doing that is when you understand over time that, okay, this is why the strategy was made the way it was. And that enables you to then think about strategy in a better way. So those are all things that you kind of piece together over time. So I don't think MBA is a point in time education, to be clear. It's something that you imbibe and then it kind of sticks with you and keeps coming back to you after that. So yeah, I hope that answered the question, but
yeah, it did. But my next question is like very basic, because I'm probably sure that a lot of people have asked you this already, but what was the inspiration behind shifting from a job in a marketing firm, steady job, and going and taking the risk of opening your own business, starting with Split?
So I can only speak for myself, right? And I'm sure everybody you speak to who kind of moves into or changes domains like this or moves into entrepreneurship will have their own story. But for me, I think it was so like I said, I was very focused on, I want to work in marketing. That is something that gives me joy. And I was clear that I want to work in marketing for a brand that I really, really like, right? And for me, that brand was Budweiser, because when I was in advertising, Budweiser is one of those brands that you learn about, right? That it's a brand that's been there for almost a century, if not more, whatever. And then you kind of learn about brand legacy, all of that. So it was kind of, like a dream job for me. In my journey, what I kind of understood about myself was that while it was amazing to see that kind of exposure, right? I worked on things like the FIFA World Cup campaign, which was happening in India for the first time, that the Indian team was also doing it.
Right.
Then we became the sponsors for La Liga and Premier League. So worked on those campaigns as well. That was when hip hop was on the rise. Gully Boy was about to come out. So we signed on Divine. We did a bunch of stuff with, drums and bass artists, with electronic music, all of that across different countries and Indian artists, all of that. A lot of fun, right? And a lot of learning, huge budgets. So it's like being at the center of everything that you dreamed about when you're kind of working in advertising, when you're working in marketing, right? But I think what I understood about myself during that 2-year process is that a couple of things. Some of it was also personal, right? I wanted to be closer to family. So I kind of took that decision that, okay, I don't want to, and that was in Bangalore. I took a decision that, okay, I want to be closer to family and I want to be in Delhi. And part of it was also that I wanted to be able to create a brand like that, right? For me, I think the joy came from being able to piece through those, those cogs in the wheel together to kind of create a brand that has a legacy like Budweiser. So while you get to work on big brands, you also have certain constraints, right? There are things that you have to follow. You can't push the needle too much as one single person, right? You have to kind of flow through the ranks for that. And while Budweiser is a very, very flat organization compared to, other, marketing organizations as well, very flat. Otherwise, you don't get to do marketing straight out of B school as well. From that perspective, it was great because it gave me a lot of exposure. But what I realized about myself was that I probably wanted to do something which was from scratch, right? So that is where I think I started thinking about, okay, what is something that will actually excite me, because I am excited about the process of creating a brand that lasts for a long, long time, right? So that's honestly what it was. And I mean, I love dogs. So I kept coming back to this idea of my dogs and the problems that I faced in giving them the right care, all of that. So you're constantly thinking about also what are problems that I am passionate about, right? That's what I was doing. And I kept coming back to, one was travel, that can I do something that I really enjoy, which is travel. The other thing that I really, really enjoy is spending time with my dogs. I started exploring problems in both, right? Travel, I felt like there's nothing that I can do as an individual which will contribute in that sector. But when we started looking at pet care, we kind of understood there's a lot that can be done, right? Because your comparison is that if I want a cigarette or whatever else from Rambhai, also it will come in 5 minutes to my door, right? If I order it on Blinkit versus if I walk there and get it. If that is the comparison, then pet care on the other hand was extremely archaic, right? Have to wait for at least an hour, half an hour at the vet's. Not sure if the vet is giving the right advice. I don't know what to feed my dog. I don't know anything, right? While I love this creature and I've got them in my life, I'm not sure what to do. So that was something I was passionate about, and that's really what got the ball rolling. Yeah. Feel free to cross question in the middle, by the way. I'll just keep like talking, but whatever you feel I'm not being clear on, ask me in the middle also.
Sure, done. So there must have been a lot of risks while you decided to go on this journey, and a lot of ups and downs. How did you end up dealing with it? And is there one incident that you vividly remember and want to share?
So risk to bahut hai. Risk in the sense that you're basically giving up a well-paying job, right? That is a big risk. I basically did an MBA because I wanted to be in that position where I could take care of my own lifestyle and not have to depend on my parents to be able to do that. So it is a risk, right? Giving that up. But I think that risk, and I mean, you carry a little bit of that guilt with you as well, right? That, I'm doing this and I'm again now back to square one. What if this doesn't work out, right? Your worst case is things don't work out, right? But I also knew at the end of that worst case is if it doesn't work out, I know, chalo, I mean, I'm speaking to an IMA audience, so I know this is relevant. You still have the degree, right? You can get a job at the end of the day. You can build yourself up from scratch. Yes, it'll be harder. Yes, it'll be tougher. It'll be a big blow to your ego, all of that. Yes. But you still have a base, right? You have a safety net in that way. Of course, I'm privileged enough that my parents could also support me during that time, all of that as well. So the risk was essentially taking this big bet, right? I'm giving this up, and I'm doing it because I have this wild dream of something that I want to achieve. And what if it doesn't happen, right? And I'm still, I mean, this is a relevant question even now. It's not like I've made it. I'm still kind of on that path. So that is a constant fear, right? It doesn't go away. And honestly, for me specifically, we started Sploot in 2019. For about a year and a half, I was still one leg in, one leg out, right? Because I wanted to make sure that kuch to I need to survive. And while I was working on Sploot, alongside, I was working somewhere else, right? I was working at this QSR brand called Insta Pizza, which is Delhi-based. They were planning to do a Rebel Foods like expansion, all of that. Then I was working at another startup called City Mall for a few months there as well. And basically, by the time I developed Sploot to a level where I felt that, okay, now it makes sense to quit now, I was still doing another job, right? It was lesser pay. It was lesser, I think, mental load as well, because you need that to be able to do something on the side. But that is what I kind of did to make sure that I am hedging my bets, right? And only when I felt that, okay, now is the time, like for us, that meant that, okay, our app is ready. Now we're ready to launch. That's when, I quit. And since then I've been working full time. That was 2020 September. So now it's been about 2 years that I've been working full time on it. And again, full time ka matlab hai ki 1 year basically meant no salary at all. So it is that jump on no salary. And thankfully we picked up some funding this year in March, and tab se salary thodi si aane lagi hai, but obviously MBA level salary. So that is a risk as well, right? You go back to your undergrad level salary after doing this, if you're lucky. So yeah.
So, but you do end up enjoying it. So even if it's
that, so I feel like, I mean, I don't know, this is how I want to approach it. Time will tell whether this is the right approach or not. But honestly, my approach to this has been that I did this because I wanted to do something I'm passionate about. And if I'm not having fun, what is the point of doing this, right? The whole reason I did this is because I wanted to chart my own path and do something that I'm passionate about. So then I work hard at making it fun, right? And doesn't mean that everything that I do is fun, right? For example, if I have to sit and understand how SEO works, which is not the most creative thing in the world, but you have to do it, right? What keywords you need to put in? Okay, what is meta descriptions? What is metadata? I have to put all of this shit now in the. Am I allowed to say these words? But okay, I've said them already. But all of this is stuff that you have to kind of do, right? If I have to pay invoices, I have to do them manually. I don't have an accountant. I don't have somebody in the finance team, because there is no team like this that exists for us. I have to do all of those things myself, right? We're a dog-friendly startup, so if a dog comes to office and he poops, I have to clean that as well, right? So I am working at all levels. So it's not that every task is fun, but I think what we work hard at doing is that it should feel like you're doing it for the right reasons, right? And then it becomes fun, that I'm doing this now so that in the future, I know this is something that will pay off because I'm doing it. But yeah.
So on this lines, do you have some advice for students who are currently studying at IME and are kind of in two minds, whether it's a good decision to actually be an entrepreneur and take that leap, or should they continue with their well-paying, happy job, which, will get them the salary that they want? So any advice on how should they approach the problem, or how should they go about it?
So honestly, and again, I'm giving this advice more to myself from whatever many years ago that I was on campus as well. I think it comes down to, are you passionate enough about what you're trying to build, right? Because the fact of the matter is, you will not see things paying off in the short run, right? You're going to give up your salary. You're going to give up whatever lifestyle you built after your B school, right? There is no exchange or foreign trips or nothing. There is no going out for dinners. You basically give up all those things. You basically don't have the money to do it, right? So what you need to keep you going is that passion, right? If you don't have that passion for it, you will not be able to survive without these things, right? So it has to be a little bit of that. And I mean, the other thing that I think doesn't get spoken about, but is the fact that you absolutely need a safety net, right? It is impossible, right? What are you going to eat and where are you going to live if that is not the case? Whether that is your parents, whether it is savings that you've kind of built up through your previous job, or maybe after IMA you work for a bit and build that savings wala thing up, or whatever it is, you need a safety net, right? It's all nice and rosy to say that हाँ नहीं, it is hustle and passion and all of that, but खाना तो खाना होता है और कहीं तो सोना होता है. So I mean, you do need that safety net, right? Whatever that means for you, it is an absolute necessity. So make sure that you've got these ingredients in place, right? If you are looking to pursue entrepreneurship, something you're extremely passionate about, that you feel that even without this will keep you going. Second is the ability to say no to these things that are enticing, and obviously you will have access to suddenly after IMA if you are kind of taking a placement, all of that. And the third thing is you need to have a safety net, right? If you don't have that safety net, you will not survive very long, very honestly, right? Because you don't know how long it's going to take for that payoff to come. So yeah.
And so throughout your career path, because there's such transitions, how have your priorities changed throughout it? Like when you were working, what were your priorities then, and what are your priorities now, and how has it grown over time?
Very interesting question. I feel like this priorities wala question. I don't know if you guys have seen, there is a women's entrepreneurship cell podcast also that IMA has. I've done a few episodes with senior alumni. You should listen to those, because I also ask this question, right? That how do you decide what is important across different stages? And these are people who work for like 15 years, 20 years, way longer than I have, right? It's very interesting that your priorities change more because of who you are as a person at the time that you are faced with those decisions, right? It's not so much ke abhi mujhe ye karna chahiye, ya I am expected to do this or expected to do that. I think for any human being, as you're kind of going through life, you will have things that happen to you, right? Because life happens to everybody, whether it is on the personal front, whether it is on the professional front. A lot of what you prioritize and what you do has to do with luck, right? What situation do you happen to be in when that happens, right? For me specifically, I think what I've seen change over the last, I think 5 years now that I've kind of graduated from IMA, what I've seen changes. I remember during undergrad when, we were thinking about giving CAT and denge, MBA karenge, jo bhi karenge. Us time, I remember my ambition was just, I want to do an MBA and I want to get a really cool job and I want to have fun and I want to live in a cool city and I'll get a car and I will go on road trips and I will just live a really good life and things will be great, right? And that's obviously like the dream that you grow up with, right? I think by the time I reached the stage where all of this was happening, I enjoyed it. Yes, absolutely. Had no savings, basically, and that should tell you everything you need to know about how much I enjoyed myself. But I think what happened by then was that I started changing in terms of, okay, now what, right? Okay, I've done this. What next, right? What is now something that I will find exciting? What is my next dream, right? So your dream keeps kind of evolving, right? Then what it became was what I was talking about in terms of why I started Sploot, right? It became, can I create something like this? If I'm working this hard for another brand, do I have it in me to actually create something like this, right? And then that became a challenge that occupied my mind, that am I able to do this? Now we're at a stage where we have a small team, right? Now my challenge is that OB problem, right? That abhi tak I was dreaming for myself. Now I have to start thinking that, okay, I have a team of people. I don't have a big brand. I don't have a lot of money that I can give them in terms of pay or whatever else, right? The only thing I can do, I know personally, is make this a journey that they enjoy and they learn a lot from, right? So now my problem has kind of expanded to becoming also their problems a little bit, right? And not that I'm some Gyani and some sadhu sitting here and doing this. But these are things that you have to kind of evolve into, because if you don't, how do you grow this organization and this brand and whatever else you're kind of trying to grow with it? So, I mean, that's really where I'm at right now. And I'm sure, like, as I keep kind of going ahead in life, those priorities will keep changing as well, right? Maybe at some point in the future, 30 years later, 40 years later, my priority becomes, ab mujhe chill karna hai zindagi mein. I will just go to a beach, open a shack. I don't know what will happen, but yeah, this is what it is now.
So do you think changing priorities are somehow related to actually achieving the goal? So once you achieve the goal, you have some satisfaction. Okay, this is what I thought it will be. Maybe it's acceptable or not, whatever, but like, now what's next? So do you think that's how it works, or do you think with time it just changes?
So I think, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be that you achieve the goal, right?
Yeah.
For example, for me, I think one of the goals was also that I wanted to, I mean, my goal at one point was that I want to stay with AB InBev for 10 years. I want to go on an international role. I want to work on the global Budweiser team. But that changed, right? I didn't achieve it, right? Because obviously I stayed only for 2 years. And I was on the India team. I didn't achieve it, but I think what happened was that maybe my goal changed, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, this, we talk in binaries, right? Ke ye achieve ho gaya ya fir tum fail ho gaye. But actually, achieve or fail ke beech mein kai sari aur cheezein bhi hoti hain jo you realize that haan theek hai, no, it's not actually like a complete success, or it's not a complete failure, or whatever it is.
Right.
I don't know, like, I'm learning to not think in those ways. It's going to just make myself feel better, whatever it is. But I think it's just better to think about it in terms of, yeah, this is what's happening right now, and therefore based on the situation I'm in, अब मुझे ऐसा लग रहा है that this might be better for me, right?
And so another question here. So when you started your journey with Sploot, when you came up with it, there are a lot of decisions to take, and there's a lot of things to be done to actually form a brand and market it. So I have a few questions related to that. For example, what was the one thing that you wish now, in hindsight, when you look back at it, you wish you would have done differently while starting the brand? Or what is a misconception that people end up having about starting a brand or starting a business, which you probably learned the hard way or through someone, but that is a misconception that people.
Okay, I have a lot of things that I've learned. Okay. One is, so because I came from a marketing background, right? My focus was always, let me start the marketing wala part pehle se, right? Because in my experience, I know that building the audience wala part is the toughest and it's the longest thing for you to do, right? It will have its own sweet time. You need to kind of work hard at it for you to be able to actually get that kind of momentum, right? So I started working on that pehle se, right? But I think initially, I think the first year or so, I thought of myself as separate from this brand that I'm trying to create, right? So, and this is maybe for people who are more interested in marketing. A brand essentially, what is it, right? If you were to kind of take it apart, it's essentially like the embodiment of a certain type of people who would be, who would like to be associated with a brand like this, right? It's an extension of your personality, right? Why do I go to, say, a Starbucks versus going to a cafe coffee day, right? There's no tangible reason why. It's just because cool hai, jo bhi hai, right? But that cool hai ka definition is somewhere inside me. I feel that I want to go here because this is a certain association I want to build, right? But I think the mistake I made was also, for the first year, I tried to keep it very separate from me, right? And at a startup wala level, what that means is not talking about it enough on my own profiles, right? And I'm talking only social media here, because that's literally the only thing you can do with a startup initially, right? It meant my face was not on the social media page, right? So it was like I was kind of shielding myself from failure also, right? It came from a little bit of that insecurity of what if this fails, and everybody in my life knows that I tried to start this stupid thing and it didn't really work out. So let me just not put my face on it. Let me run it as a separate thing, right? But usse kya hua ki wo, because you are trying to separate yourself from it, you're actually stopping yourself from taking it seriously enough, right? Because the stakes are not high enough for you. So, I mean, the piece of advice essentially is you have to go all in, right? And I don't mean in terms of you can't do another job or you can't have something else that's giving you money. I mean mentally, right? You have to be in it 100%. At some level, it has to become the founder's personality for it to really be something that reflects in the brand, right? The brand essentially at initial stages is the people behind it. It is not an abstract thing that you create. So that is one. The other thing is more specific to what I'm doing, right? So we're basically building a tech platform for pet parents, and I have zero tech background. I have never, I haven't done computer science. I've never worked on. I mean, my only stint at a tech-based startup was for 3 months at City Mall, and even then, I wasn't looking at any of the tech aspects, right? So everything was new for me, and we arrived at this tech solution only because it seemed like the only logical solution there, right? So I had to learn from scratch. I think for that meant that I made a lot more mistakes there, right? It meant that I didn't understand that building an app, for example, doesn't mean कि तुम बना दो एक बारी और फिर हो जाएगा, right? It's the same principle across anything you're doing, whether it's marketing or tech or ops or whatever else. You have to keep working on it, right? You have to keep improving it. Nothing is कि एक बारी release हो गया और 100% perfect है. So getting over that feeling of I will not launch it or I will not kind of go after it till it is 100% perfect is that feeling that you should try to reject from the get-go, right? It takes a little bit of time. Took me about a year for sure, because that's how long we've worked on our first app for. And then you realize after that, Achha, theek hai, okay, but now I need to make 10 million more changes because I've just suddenly understood that, okay, no, this needs to be better or whatever else. So you realize that it's an iterative process. And that is life in general, I feel. But yeah, go all in terms of your mental ability. And second is things move iteratively. Nothing is going to be perfect in one go.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think I'll take a few questions from the chat.
Yes.
One of the questions is that what are the few things a marketing enthusiast, because the kids are about to start their placement process, so they're pretty worried, I guess. What are the few things that a marketing enthusiast must keep in mind to have a successful career in the domain?
I think the first thing, and I think this is the most important thing for all of us, because we're living in an age where your channels of communication are changing literally every year, right? When you guys probably started IMA, your channels of digital marketing were probably मतलब जो basic वाले होते हैं, Facebook, Google, Instagram, Snapchat, चलो maybe whatever, right? Now you suddenly have a plethora of, you have a Discord, you have, what can you do with community, right? What do you do with, there's this new app called Be Real, right? Which is there. There's an even newer app called Gas. You guys should look it up, which is now apparently going like really, really viral, right? So there are all of these different ways for you to be able to reach your audience. And this is, I'm talking as a brand manager, right? If you were to join any of these companies, what you should never give up is keeping yourself informed of what is happening in the real world, right? What usually happens is when you're working in a company, right, you get so indoctrinated in how that company works that you, obviously, because it's important, right, for you to survive in that environment, you have to focus on, अच्छा, इस ब्रांड के लिए, फॉर एग्जांपल अगर लॉरियल पे हो या जहां पे भी हो, इसके लिए मेरे रिटेल वाले बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, इसके लिए ओके इन्फ्लुएंसर्स आर एक्सट्रीमली इंपॉर्टेंट, इसके लिए इंस्टाग्राम इज इंपॉर्टेंट, इसके लिए these properties are important, all of that. But don't get boxed into thinking only of those avenues, right? Because those are avenues right now, but 3 years later, if there is something that right now is upcoming, 3 years later every brand will latch onto it, right? Can you be the person who brings that idea to the team? I think that's not valued enough, right? But if you start becoming that person in a marketing team who always knows of the trends, right? That's essentially what marketing is, right? Where are the people? You have to know what the pulse is of your audience. If you start keeping tabs on what is my audience doing apart from this glamour of whatever my brand is, right? Only you will think about your brand that much. Other customers won't, right? Think about your lives right now. Ever since I've left Budweiser, I have probably had Budweiser maybe like 3 times in the last 4 months, right? But when I was at Budweiser, I was having it maybe like 4 times a week. because it is just the amount of exposure you have, right? So never let go of educating yourself on ho kya raha hai in my customer's life, right? Having that pulse on the user is extremely important. Yeah. So definitely do that. That's the one thing. If you do, everything else will fall into place.
There's another question on what are your plans for scaling up Sploot, and how are you planning to diversify it, and what are the opportunities available there?
Yeah. So, I mean, for us, honestly, what we're kind of trying to do is we're trying to solve. So have you had a dog ever, Sakshi?
No, but I want to. My parents won't allow me to have a dog.
What do your parents say when you say कि नहीं? When you say कि मुझे चाहिए?
It's too much effort. You won't take care of it. We'll have to, and it's too much effort.
That's the problem we're solving, right? Our literal mission is to solve this question of ध्यान कौन रखेगा, right?
Exactly.
Because a lot of people want dogs, right? They either get dogs and then get stuck with how do I take care of this dog, and I'm using dogs as like a catch-all thing for all pets, or they are not able to get dogs because of the same question, right? Our goal ultimately is, I mean, we believe life becomes better with a dog, right? You have an instant stress buster. You have a screen break because your dog will make sure that you're taking a walk every 2 hours. You will always be able to kind of vent out things, and these secrets will never get out. Your lifestyle will stay the same, all of that. So we believe dogs make lives easier. And we want to make sure that it's easy for people to be able to give them the best life that they should get, right? So that's the vision, right? What we're doing right now is there are 3 parts of the problem that we're trying to solve, right? The first problem is information. I just don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go for help, right? And if only there was something that could tell me, right? Your solution right now is latching on to random people you find who are dog parents and asking them, kya kar rahe ho, kaise kar rahe ho, kyo kar rahe ho? And that is a little bit of there is a limit to it, right? There's only so much you can do with that one person or 2 people that you know. What we're kind of what we're creating on the app, and you guys should check it out and give me feedback on, is this working for the kids or not? What we're kind of doing is building a platform where, as a pet parent, imagine you get a dog and you download the Sploot app. It's like having a live user manual, right? For your dog. This is what your dog is trying to tell you when they're doing A, B, C, D, E, F, whatever. This is what you should be doing at whatever stage you are in with your dog. If you're facing any issues which seem unusual and I don't know how to do this, we've got a community which is very, very active in terms of asking questions, answering questions, all of that. We do weekly events with experts who can kind of break down those behaviors, teach you how to train, plan food, all of that as well. So that's the education piece, right? Apart from that, what we picked is this dhyan kaun rakhega wala problem in real life is your daily chores, right? For your dog. रोज वॉक करानी है, which is a headache. रोज खाना खिलाना है जो वो खाएगा नहीं a lot of times because उसको या attention चाहिए या खाना नहीं पसंद या जो भी है. Those are the 2 problems we're trying to solve, right? The first we're solving by creating a cohort of trained dog walkers, right? We train them, we hire them. We have, on our app, for example, you can track live location of the walker when they're out. You get stats for how much your dog has walked, all of that, so that you're actually able to keep tabs on, is my dog getting the work that they actually need, right? And therefore, less obese dogs, well-fed, exercise dogs, all of that. Similarly, for food, what we've done is we've made a subscription service for fresh food for dogs, which is balanced by a nutritionist, right? Usually, hum ghar ka khana de dete hain, but it's not balanced, right? Which is why dogs end up with a lot of health problems as well. So we're making it like a subscription kind of service there. So those 2 aspects we're looking at right now. In the future, to answer that question, our goal is to basically become a super app for dog parents, right? Everything in one place. I have 20 different apps for myself and all the weird things that I like doing. For my dog, I want one. That is the goal, right? To become that one place where you go to for any product, any service, all of that. But yeah.
But how does it work though? How are you able to manage such professionals? So you are employing them in your own company, right? For example, dog walkers and all of that. So the whole process of finding an employee, employing them rather than just taking it from an agency would be much, much more difficult. So what kind of challenges did you face while getting the employees and handling them?
Yeah, so we don't, they're not technically employees, right? It's kind of like how when Zomato and Swiggy started off, there was no job called delivery executive, right?
Right.
There were no
Right.
writers in the country that you could just tap into, right? They created a stream of gig workers by
Right.
training them initially, right? This is what you have to
Right.
do. This is the uniform you have to wear. You have to pick up the packet here. You have to send me a photo that you've confirmed you picked it up. You have to tap on the app that I picked it up. Now I'm going
Right.
there, I'm dropping it and all of that, right? That is what we're trying to do with dog walking, right?
Okay.
With a hiring agency, you will never be able to get that level of control over quality, right? So
Right.
while it is obviously it is a hard thing to do, but we believe that if we are able to ensure quality, that is why people will stick with us. As opposed to, I could also tell my gardener to walk the dog, right? Or I could tell any other person who's working in the house to also walk the dog, right?
Right.
The difference will come in when we are saying that our walkers are trained and we are absolutely transparent, right? Because you can track every single thing on the app, as opposed to not knowing what's happening
Right.
in another situation, right? So how we manage it is we've got a team that works only on walker success, right? So for example, if we were to get customers and they are assigned walkers, right? This walker success team essentially works on making sure that they are trained by a person who has created a module for us on dog walking, how to walk the dog, how to understand what the dog is trying to tell you, all of that. It's basically understanding dogs more than understanding people, right? Which a lot of us don't know how they communicate, right? So we train them on obviously how to interact with the dog, as well as a lot of the soft skills that you would need in any service industry, right? How do you talk to the customer? How are you supposed to be dressing during the job? What kind of protocols do you need to follow? All of that as well. And apart from that, obviously making sure of things like safety, making sure that they're happy, what are issues that they're facing, can we help solve them, all of that as well. Because that's how you make sure that they stick with you as well.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, you basically define metrics that will lead up to whatever your end goal is, right? For us, for example, it is growing revenue and ensuring retention for customers. So how does revenue come down? Revenue is, okay, new customers plus old customers into whatever price they're paying, right? So that is customer acquisition side. If you talk about retention, retention is a little more complex, right? Why is a customer sticking with you? Yes, chalo, price is one factor, sure, right? But beyond price, it is service quality, right? And if you were to break down service quality, it comes down to these things. Is my walker reaching on time? Are they following all of the things that they're supposed to be following when I signed up? Do they have a good relationship with my dog, right? That is a very important thing for us, right? Because people want to know that my dog is being treated well, right? They're like babies. So all of those things are codified into our training programs, and that's what we can, that's what adds up into retention. So it feels like ye related nahi hai, but it's all adding in some way.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah.
There's one interesting question here. So, like recently, when millennials or young adults are trying to go out there and rent homes and trying to stay in a rented place, there are a lot of housing societies and a lot of complexes who forbid dogs. Like they don't want pets, and it's kind of an increasing trend for rental housing societies where they just don't want the hassle. So dogs are not allowed or pets are not allowed. So what is your take based on the trend that's going on? And do you think that will catch up more? Or
yeah, so I mean, I honestly feel that it's a moment of reckoning almost, right, for the space, right? People have had dogs for a long time, right? These issues have also probably existed for a long time, right? But why are they now coming up in the media, right? It's happening because maybe the number of people who are getting dogs and number of people who want to have dogs is increasing, right? Which is why now the conflict is increasing, right?
right.
Does the conflict need a resolution? Absolutely, right? Have there been other countries in the past who have resolved these conflicts? Absolutely, right? So I think it is only a matter of dialogue, right? So technically speaking, your RWA cannot say that we don't allow dogs, right? It is illegal.
Right.
I mean, it is technically not something they can do. RWAs also, by the way, need to have one representative who looks at animal welfare as part of this. It's in the rules of your Resident Welfare Association ka jo act hai. Anyway, I mean, that's all legality. Obviously, nobody really, theek hai, law mein likha hai, kaun karega. But I feel like it's a matter of dialogue, right? a lot of people have problems with dogs because they probably had bad experiences with dogs, right?
Right.
Either they've been bitten or they are scared, or the concern a lot of times, a lot of times the concern.
IMA. The dog issue has been there for a very, very long time now.
Oh, yeah. और अच्छा हमारे टाइम पे इतना नहीं था, okay, but right, so either it's that or it is that some people obviously have a concern with they poop anywhere, right? What are you going to do about hygiene, right? That's why a lot of people are particular about, for example, in the children's parks in societies, dogs should not be allowed, right? Uska counter फिर आता है कि अच्छा what do you do about stray dogs? फिर उसका और escalate हो जाता है कि हटा दो उनको. Anyway, it's an endless thing.
Loop.
Right?
It's a loop. Yeah. It's just...
Ultimately, I think it comes down to dialogue, right? I think there are expectations on both sides that need to be tempered, right? And I'm saying this as somebody who absolutely fights that uncle in the park who tells me that you are not allowed to bring a dog here, right? I am that person. But what I've realized over time is that if you actually reason with logic, right? And I mean, this is sure it's a little soft, this piece of advice, but one sec, yeah. But if you were to turn it a little bit into, okay, why are you stressing so much? Your problem is that I'm not scooping the poop. I've got my pooper scooper here. I will do it. What is the problem, right? If you treat it with logic, you'll find that a lot of those disputes actually end up not being disputes, right? I think a lot of non-dog parents, I mean most, right? There are some people who just don't see reason also. I'm not denying that they don't exist. But I think a lot of people just maybe have not been reasoned with, right? So I think it's our responsibility as dog parents, dog lovers, to just question, right? And just be like, okay, lekin kyun, right? They teach you this 5 whys. Get to the crux of the problem. The crux of the problem is most likely fear, right? If it is fear, what can we do as people who are in a position to create role models out of dogs and dog parents, right? Do we need to train our dogs to not bite kids and bite strangers? Absolutely, right? That's on us. I mean, I would not be comfortable with my dog doing that to another child, right? Or any other, right? That's my responsibility. You can't then go out and blame other people for doing that, right? So I think there are responsibilities and rights, and on both sides, that dialogue is something that is happening now, and that's a good thing, right? That means that there will be resolution eventually. Maybe the next generation will be more dogs and lesser fights, but dogs win everybody over ultimately. It's like if you bring a dog home right now, your parents will be the first people to melt. It will happen
soon, hopefully.
Yeah.
So the next question is back to MBA. We're going back to MBA. So there's this question saying that if you could go back in time and address yourself while you were sitting for placements, would you have taken a break from placements and taken the entrepreneurship route? If you think about it now.
You're talking about, I mean, knowing what I know now? Or
knowing what you know now.
Honestly, no. I mean, I feel like I was very kacha before I worked at Budweiser. Like, I feel like there's a lot you learn from working in different workplaces, which you cannot substitute.
It's
right?
real world experience.
Real world experience is also different types of experiences, right? It's like being in training, right? So unless, and I'm not saying that people can't do well without that, right? I'm not saying that, but for me, I think what really helped was seeing very different environments of, okay, workplaces can look like this, they can also look like this, and they can also look like this. And from the benefit of those experiences, now I have decided that my workplace, when I am kind of in a position to control those decisions, should look like this, right? Whether it's from understanding through good experiences or understanding from bad experiences, I think there is stuff to learn, absolutely, right? Especially, I mean, I find it very funny when people say that you don't need to join a big job and don't need to do this or that or whatever. But what you have to also understand is that those companies are big for a reason, right? They have systems in place that have ensured that they have lasted that entire time. And in the time that they have kind of reached where they are, obviously the world has changed as well, right? And it's a cycle. Like every company, every organization kind of goes through a cycle of either you fight or you perish, right? these are companies that have fought and have survived, right? And obviously flourished after that. There's a lot to learn from that. There is a reason that those routines exist. And I mean, it's very funny because I remember raging against a lot of these things that I used to find like, kya hai ye? It's a time waste of time, itni meeting hai. I am now instilling some of those routines into our startup now, right? That at that time I used to be like, oh, this is such a waste of time. And now I'm like, okay, this is why it's required to do this. But maybe I can put in some checks to make sure that it doesn't extend a certain period of time. Maybe I can do those things, right? But your perspective really changes based on who you are in that setting also. So, so I wouldn't change it.
Yeah. Perfect. I think that was the last question.
Awesome.
You have any final notes to add? Any advice for second years or first years? We'll take it.
Please enjoy your last few months in college. You're going to be crying in March when you graduate. After that, you don't know what's going to happen and when you're going to be coming back next. Stay on campus for as long as you can. And Baki, it's fun. Life is good outside of campus as well. You'll always have fond memories.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Garima.